Tonight's topic, homosexuality, is one of the biggest topics in our world and our era and our time. I know for those of you who are in school, you confront it every single day as a topic or as a reality. And Christ has a lot of really positive things to say. The church has amazing things to say. But that voice doesn't get out because of the voice of the world. So, we have with us today a good friend of mine, Father Kyle, who is from the Archdiocese of Cincinnati in Ohio.
No cheers.
Let's first off, we're Indiana. Let's give a round of applause for Skyline Chili. Let's give a round of applause for all the people from Cincinnati that come to Indiana to eat our chicken. We just had 2 festivals, which is awesome. So, Father Kyle is the pastor of 2 parishes there, Blessed Sacrament Parish and St. John Corpus Christi, which is Blessed Sacrament. Right. Corpus Christi and St. John Newman. And he also serves as the chaplain for Courage, which is an organization in the Catholic Church for homosexual people who live the teachings of the Church. So, the outside world says the Catholic Church hates gay people. The outside world says the Catholic Church doesn't like homosexuals. And yet the reality is that the Catholic Church has organizations for people with same-sex attraction who have these feelings and desires. So he is the chaplain for the Courage chapter in the greater Cincinnati area. So with no further ado, Father Carl.
It's great to, it's really an honor to be with you, share some thoughts. Something that's really near and dear to my heart, and something that's been really life-changing in my priesthood for the last 5 years. So 5 years ago, I was serving as vocation director for the Archdiocese of Cincinnati, a little over 5 years ago. And the Archbishop pulls me into his office, and there's a psychologist who did the psych evals for guys entering seminary, right? You remember those well. It's, you know, it takes treatment to get over the treatment. There was a psychologist there was another guy there I didn't know, there was a guy there I did know, there was 2 other priests that were in the room, and the director of the family life office. And I'm like, one of these doesn't belong and it's me. But we started, as soon as he, it was a presentation about courage, the ministry of courage. And it was the easiest sell job in the history of the church. Within 5 minutes, the Archbishop's like, I know what courage is, I love it, and what do we need to do to make it happen here in Cincinnati? And so the psychologist started talking about, well, the most important thing is to assign a priest that's good and holy, that knows the teachings of the church, that's a great father figure, and present to this population, knows the dynamics that are present in this population. At which time I'm thinking, I'm out scot-free, I'm done. I'm just sitting in this meeting wasting my time. 2 weeks later, the Archbishop calls me into his office again. He says, I really want you to take on that ministry. The ministry of courage, of weekly walking with persons who experience same-sex attraction. Notice, very clinical definition, but a very accurate definition. Persons who experience same-sex attraction. We always start with the person. Change my priesthood, because what I do now is when I'm preaching on Sundays and I look out and I see my parishioners, what I see is also the things that we all have something in our life that we can point to that says, because I have this, I'm different than anyone else. Because I have this, I'm unlovable. Because I have this, God certainly doesn't love me because He created me. He made a mistake when He created me. And working with courage has taught me to really speak the love of Christ right into that moment in their life. Whatever that thing is. And that got tested for me 2 years ago. 2.5 years ago, I get an email from a friend who says, hey, you should apply for this show called the Great American Baking Show. I was like, I'll apply, I'll never get on it. Long story short, I got on the show. And you remember? Yeah? You know who was the most jealous person that I got on that show? He's sitting in the back dressed like this. But anyways, I get on the show and I'm doing all this prep and I'm like, there's a priest on a baking show and I know there's going to be 9, 10 other people. And there are going to be guys, men and women, and I knew like they had to cover their bases in casting. Because they don't want all of me. I knew going into it, they were going to have a man who was in a same-sex partnership and relationship. I just knew it. So we go to London. We fly to London. That's where we filmed. And I met most of the other contestants, some of whom I had already known through the application process. And finally, one guy walks in. The last guy walks in. I'm like, that's the guy I have to love. And he sat down at dinner and he started talking about his husband. Okay. And he probably expected me not to like him or not to talk to him. And I'm like, that's the guy I need to be the closest to. Because everyone else in this room is expecting me to have that response. Right? You chuckle. Why did you chuckle?
It's just so bad.
I know, right? What is that from? What group is that? You didn't have any idea? You know what group that is? It's part of a group called the Westboro Baptist Church. They're the ones who picket. They do publicity stunts to picket at soldiers' funerals. They picket and they do all these things and they hold up signs that say, God hates fags. Fags are going to hell, whatever. Fags die, God laughs. And the reason I brought this up is because they've done such a good job of publicity that when someone thinks of the church, when they think of the church, when they think of Christians, and they think of how Christians look at persons with same-sex attraction, someone from outside the church, that's what they think of. So when you go to college, or you're in high school, and you're trying to say you're wearing altar boys gear at your public high school, whoever has that on, or you're wearing All Saints gear, and they say, are you Catholic? And you're like, yeah, proud to be so, because he's taught you how to be a proud Catholic. And someone who has same-sex attraction, someone who thinks that they're gay, that's what they think. You think of them. You automatically hate me because I'm gay. Do you? Should you? Who says yes? Okay. No, but how do we respond to people like that? What do we do? The same thing, it's the same approach. Do we think gays are automatically going to hell? No. It's the same approach that I knew I had to take when I was going on a baking show. I knew someone was going to show up, and I knew that I had to love that person. That's our call. Love one another as I have loved you. So are gays going to hell? Are people who experience transgender going to hell? No. Not automatically. No. So what do we believe? There's a vital distinction in this. Because we love that person. No matter who it is, we love them. We love them with kindness. We love them with compassion. We love them in the ability to say, tell me your story. How did you know this about yourself? When did you know this about yourself? Fascinating. Just tell me your story. Because I'm fascinated in you. Wonderful question. Because we can't speak the truth if we don't have love for that person. And so we admonish, we speak that once we come to know that person, once we love that person because that person is Jesus to us, then we can start to admonish in love. We start to correct in love, or we start to invite them to something deeper in love. Yeah, you have this thing. Okay, great. Fine. How do you walk with it? How do you do that? Because we don't want someone, if they persist in their sin, if they stay in their sin, if they know that this is the truth and they're like, see ya, peace out, homies, I'm gone, and they die in that state, chances of going to hell do go up because of their hardness of heart. And your job, they expect me, and they expect Father Meyer, they even expect Sam, because she works here. They expect us to say certain things. When you say this, when you walk with them, and when you say, tell me about it, here's something greater that the church offers. When you talk about that, you guys speak with a greater eloquence than we can. Because they're like, you have to say that because you're a priest. You get to say that because you're Catholic. And you know Jesus, and you know that Jesus always comes to bring us freedom. Amen? Amen? Yeah? Jesus comes to bring us freedom. I always push the next slide, and I'm like, I wonder what's on the next slide. I forget. I wrote it today. So, where do we go to understand the teachings about, the church's teaching about homosexuality? Turn to the Catechism. The Bible's pretty clear, but the Catechism summarizes it in such a beautiful way. But it only talks about it in 3 paragraphs. The Catechism is 3,000 paragraphs long. Plus. It only talks about homosexuality in three of those paragraphs. The church hates gays. You don't get that much print. Priests get a lot more print than that. Lady, you too. And what's beautiful about where the Catechism teaches on same-sex attraction, homosexuality, it puts it into the context of the call to chaste living, the vocation to chastity. And who in this room is called to a chaste life? Who else in this room? Oh, some timid hands are going up in the front. Who else in this room? You should all be putting your hands up, right? This document from Pius XII, Casti Connubii, on chaste marriage. No matter what your call is, you're called to a chaste relationship. So the Catechism isn't singling out these persons in a very dramatic way. It's putting them into a call that we've all been given. And you see that even in that section on the vocation of chastity, it works up to chastity and homosexuality by talking about the integrity of the person. It looks at the whole person, who we are. Because I think that's something our modern world's wants to devolve us down to just our sexual urges. That's called an animal. We're not animals. We are animals, but we're more than an animal. We don't just respond to a sexual urge and say, woo, look, no. You have a brain that God gave you to use. And so the integrity of the person is engaging the brain to allow the gifts God has given to you to flourish as a whole person in Christ, body and soul, body and spirit. Those two go together. Integrity of the person leads to integrality of the gift of self. that we can't give ourselves unless we know ourselves. We know ourselves because of our relationship with Jesus Christ. We know ourselves because Jesus taught us to call God our Father, and we know that we are His sons and daughters, His beloved sons and daughters. And how Jesus gives Himself to us so that we can give ourselves in appropriate ways to others. Catechism goes on to talk about various forms of chaste living, chastity. And then it talks about offenses against chastity. These are the fun ones. Lust, masturbation, what else is in there? Fornication, pornography, prostitution, rape. Talks about all those before we get to homosexuality. See, people say the catechism is boring. That's a pretty fun list to talk about, isn't it? Maybe, maybe not. You're looking at me like, don't bring them up again. It's only then that the catechism gets to chastity and homosexuality. So it's looked at what chastity is, how it gives us freedom to give ourselves to those who come to us, how that life of chastity is lived out in various ways in the church, in the world. It looks at how we can break chaste living, and then it talks about chaste living with homosexuality. Okay? Make sense? It's a good principle, not only when reading the catechism, but when reading the Bible. You don't just look at that one little verse. You look at what's before it. You look at what's after it. You look at how it's set into a context of a whole paragraph. You look at what's leading into that paragraph, what's leading from that paragraph. So, the 3 paragraphs on homosexuality in the catechism. There's paragraph 2357. Very clinical definition. So we have to know what our terms are in order to be able to talk about them intelligently. Homosexuality refers to relations between men or between women who experience an exclusive or predominant sexual attraction toward persons of the same sex. It's taken a great variety of forms through the centuries and in different cultures. An important piece here. Its psychological genesis remains largely unexplained. We don't know why it happens. Nature, nurture, we don't care. It happens. Why does it happen? When we look at it from a theological point of view, why does it happen? Because Adam let Eve eat a fruit of a tree. That's why it happens. That's why it happens. Basing itself on sacred scripture, which always presents homosexual acts as acts of grave depravity. Notice acts, not persons. Tradition has always declared that homosexual acts are intrinsically disordered. They're contrary to the natural law. They close the sexual act to the gift of life, and they do not proceed from a genuine, affective, and sexual complementarity. And under no circumstances can they be approved. They close the sexual act to the gift of life. Two men coming together cannot create life. Two women coming together cannot create life. God created us with a complementarity. Full stop. Notice, not just sacred scripture, but tradition, reason, natural law is informing this. What else in there? What do we mean by intrinsically disordered? Any thoughts on intrinsically disordered? Does that mean that person is flawed? I keep walking out of the camera and she keeps yelling at me through this glance. I was like, get back in the camera. What does it mean intrinsically disordered? See, this is where I wish I knew names. It's like calling someone like the one in purple right there in the middle. Yeah, you. What do you think intrinsically disordered means? It's a big term. Don't get me wrong. So let's go. Are they disordered? Where are they? Intrinsically disordered. Disordered. So there's an order to things, right? So disordered means, does that mean that they're ordered in the way that God wants us? No, they're backwards. Intrinsically, who's a senior? High school. Want to be a senior? Yeah. Oh, nice. Thanks. Intrinsically. What's intrinsically mean?
I'm not good at this.
No.
I don't know.
Seminarian. You want a lifeline from the seminarian in the back?
Doesn't it mean like enter, like inside?
Yeah. At the very core of who they are. The very core of who they are. These acts are acts that are disordered. The acts are acts that are disordered because they don't follow the way God has laid out human generativity to work.
Can you just what is human generativity?
Generativity.
Thank you.
How human beings create life. Two tabs coming together don't work. Sorry if that's a little vulgar. But that's boom. Yeah, thank you. It takes a male and a female. It takes a man and a woman to come together in a romance, in a protection of the married covenant to generate life. Hopefully in the context of the marital covenant. Not always. So because they're not there, because they cannot give life, the acts themselves are intrinsically disordered. Is the person disordered? No. Right, you're shaking your head no. Good job. Thank you. Person not disordered, the acts are. So that paragraph, very much a clinical paragraph, defining the terms that we mean. The second paragraph gets into a much more pastoral sense of who we should be about as the church. The number of men and women who have deep-seated homosexual tendencies is not negligible. They're present in your parish, they're present in your families, they are certainly present in your schools. This inclination, which is objectively disordered, same thing, intrinsically objectively disordered, constitutes for most of them a trial. They must be accepted with respect, compassion, and sensitivity. Every sign of unjust discrimination in their regard should be avoided, and these persons are called to fulfill God's will in their lives, and if they are Christians, I love this line, to unite to the sacrifice of the Lord's cross the difficulties they may encounter from their condition. And again, who else is called to unite to the sacrifice of the Lord's cross the difficulties we may encounter in our condition? Who in this room is called to do that? Everybody's hand should be going up. I know, it's really fun. Jesus promises one thing, the cross. So one of the guys I work with in Courage, who's a married man, said that was a fun discussion when his wife found out that he was looking at gay porn. Ladies, imagine that. Discover your husband with that. Woo, right? She stuck with him. Yeah, it's not a little bit weird. It's a lot bit weird. She stuck with him in a heroic act of kindness and love to her husband. She stuck with him. But he talks about, I wouldn't wish this on anybody. This is hard. This is difficult. And this is a challenge. But what I've come to understand and know and learn is that the way I pick up this cross that God has given to me, why ever He gave it to me, the way I pick this cross up, the way I carry it, the way I grow in my relationship with Jesus in this cross of same-sex attraction as a married man, is how Jesus comes to me and how I enter into my salvation. This is how Jesus comes to me, and this is how I enter into my salvation. What a statement of faith. What a statement of faith. We were looking last night, I was teaching in my parish on the Our Father. And at the end of the Our Father, we'd say, deliver us from evil and lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Right? And the importance of learning the distinction and discerning the distinction between what's a trial, what Jesus is giving to us to purify our hearts, our minds, and our intentions and our desires to be with Him, what he's giving to us as a trial versus what He's allowing us, the devil, to do to us as a temptation. Those are hard distinctions to make. You've got a football on your shirt. Do you play football for the Central? No?
No.
Ah, never mind. Who does? Anybody? You do? Yeah? It's a trial to play football, isn't it? You got 2 days are coming. Have you started 2 days? No? Do you have 2 days? Oh, you're lucky. Cross country runners, right? You put in the miles? Coach, Father Coach?
I hope so.
You better be putting in the miles. It's a trial to put in the miles so you can get faster. The temptation is to say, oh, I don't really need to do this. It's raining today. It's hotter and blazes. I don't want to go out and run. Trial versus temptation. And so even here, looking at how this is a trial, and our response as disciples, when we see someone going through a trial, when we see someone running as a trial to get better, what should we be doing if we see him out running? I'm not going to run with you. You passed me long past. But I'll grab a bike and I'll bike with you. Encourage you. What?
He's pretty fast.
He's pretty fast. I probably couldn't keep up with him on a bike either. I'll drive behind you. How's that? All right? Homosexual persons are called to chastity. We're all called to chastity. This is not excluding or narrowing things down. By the virtues of this paragraph, by the virtue of self-mastery, that teach them inner freedom, at times by support of disinterested friendship, by prayer and sacramental grace, they can and should gradually and resolutely approach Christian perfection. Christian perfection. Sainthood. Christian perfection is to be a saint before God. And that's something we're all called to. All saints. Right? It's your parish patron. What becomes disinterested friendship? Disinterested friendship. Now again, Catechism uses big terms. Disinterested friendship. So there are guys who come to Courage who say this is the first time in their life that they've had friendships with guys who just as friends. So disinterested friendship means I just wish the best for you. I don't want anything out of you. I don't want to use you. We shouldn't use each other anyway. But it's just I want you to go to heaven, and I, as your friend, am going to try and do my best to help get you to heaven. So many of these guys that come to Courage, and for us, for my group, Courage is predominantly male. I've talked to some women here and there throughout the years, but predominantly male. This is disinterested friendship. This is the first time they've been a part of a group of guys that actually lifts them up just for the sake of lifting each other up. Not seeking to use each other, not seeking to use each other for pleasure, not seeking to twist and covert. Just disinterested friendship. And that's something that we should all be about, we should all strive to do. Be good friends, especially as high school students. That's your call. Be good friends to each other. Be good friends to each other. Support each other. Love each other as brothers and sisters. And help each other work gradually and resolutely towards Christian perfection, to become saints. All saints, all day. Because that's become something that I'm probably going to get myself in trouble, but I'm going to say it anyways. The gay culture, and we make a distinction between persons with same-sex attraction and gay culture. Gay culture is inherently narcissistic. It's inherently focused in on itself. The amount of promiscuity that exists in same-sex marriages is high. Very high. 75% high. Promiscuity. Which means that, yeah, I might be married to this, one man might be married to another man, but they're still cruising and going to gay bars. The diseases that happen among men who have sex with men, among women who have sex with women, the amount of diseases that happen. Most men in the gay culture have to wear, and these would be otherwise healthy men in their 20s, in their 30s. Most men have to wear adult diapers, some version of Depends, because it just tears everything up. It's not designed to go there. And it's about this seeking my own pleasure above all other things. And that is not resolutely approaching Christian perfection that we're all called to. You want to die to self? Have a baby wake you up at 2 in the morning. Father Meyer and I, we got the easy end of this deal. We don't ever have to do that. We might get a call every now and again to go to the hospital. But I never wake up with a foot in my face. You know? Like my twin brother does. What I love about courage is it gives us a pattern of life, not just for those who experience same-sex attraction, but it gives us a pattern of life to be a better Catholic and a better Christian. So early on, the first members of Courage came up with 5 goals. There's only 2. I still can count. I still can do math. Simple math. There's more on the next page. To live lives in accordance with the Roman Catholic Church's teaching on homosexuality. To live a life of chastity. To dedicate our entire lives to Christ through service to others, spiritual reading, prayer, meditation, individual spiritual direction, attendance at Mass, frequent reception of the sacraments, Eucharist, reconciliation of the Holy Eucharist. To be a person of prayer and dedication. Is that something that applies only to Father Meyer and I because we're priests? No, it applies to all of us. Fellowship. Foster a spirit of fellowship in which we may share with one another our thoughts and experiences, so ensure that no one has to face this problem alone. Find someone that understands you. And that's the beauty of married life. Hopefully, ideally, the goal of married life, you have that fellowship with your spouse, with your husband, with your wife. That doesn't always work. I've met couples that are lonelier as married couples than I am for sure. But find someone you can share your heart with in a good way. To be mindful of the truth that chaste friendships are not only possible, but necessary in forming and sustaining these friendships. So support each other, to live lives that may serve as a good example to others, a good example to role model. Be an example of the faith. Does that sound like it could apply? Those 5 goals could apply to you? Yeah? You're nodding your head yes. Courage is a great example. I forgot that I was supposed to do the transgender stuff. The challenge with transgender, when someone your age comes forward and says, I'm a girl, but I think I'm a boy. Or a boy, but I think I'm a girl. the first thing the doctors have to do, the standard of care. So there's standards of care. So if you go to the doctor and you have like a snotty nose and a sinus infection, what you think is a sinus infection, they're going to ask you certain questions. What color mucus do you have? All kinds of other things, and they're going to, and here's the medicine you take for that. The challenge is someone comes forward, says, I really think I'm a boy. Father Meyer and I we're going to sit down and say, well, tell me about that experience, tell me, and we're going to be listening for things where did that get hijacked? If you go to a doctor, if you go to Children's Hospital in Cincinnati, and say that same statement, they're going to prescribe you hormones. The first treatment the first part of the standard of care is to treat hormones. To treat as if, no, you're right, so we're going to try and transition you from a male to a female, from a female to a male. And there's a great line, you don't fix psychological problems with surgical steel. The heart of transgenderism and when someone approaches or experiences transgendered ideology, there's a psychological problem. And we in the church, we get in trouble because we want to address that. We want to look at that. When someone comes to me, I'm like, I'm listening for trauma. I'm listening for pornography. I'm listening for when did that first, and even you start asking questions, and these are questions I can ask, you probably can't. When did you first start to recognize this? But at the core of who you are, no matter what you do to your outward appearance, at the core of who you are, you will always be a male or a female. The church doesn't teach this non-binary, well, call me they, I don't know, whatever. I look at Twitter and I see these pronouns in Twitter bios, I'm like, so stupid. I'm on Twitter too much. I'll bring that to confession next time I go. The very core of who you are, even hardwired into your cells, you're male or female. You can't change that. And all those same principles that we talk about with same-sex attraction apply in transgenderism too. We love them, we have compassion for them, try to get them to tell your story. But the important thing is, be their friend, not their counselor. And that applies across the board. Be a friend, not a counselor. If someone comes in and drops this humongous bomb right in your lap, it's not your problem to fix. You take it to Father Meyer, you take it to Sam, you take it to someone at school, a teacher at school that you trust. But you walk with that person. But you don't have to fix it. And I know, ladies, you're the worst. Sorry. Don't tell anyone, but. Right? You snickered. Yep. Don't tell anyone, but. Because I love you, because I love you like my sister, I need to tell someone else to get you help. That's okay to say. That's great to say. I talked for like too long. Any questions? What do you do when? What do you do when it's hot? As blazes in this room, you remind yourself that if I don't change my ways, I'm going to where it's hot all the time.
Right.
Right? All right.
Questions, come on. No one has any questions?
Yes, here.
Can a person that is gay or lesbian or anything, can they become a priest or not?
Can a person who is gay or lesbian, can they become a priest?
Can I interrupt just real quick?
Yes.
I think it's really, really important. I realize that our society uses labels, and for those of you who heard my homily this weekend, I am gay. No, you're not. I'm a lesbian. No, you're not. I am a human being who has same-sex attraction. radically different than defining them by
Yeah.
their disorder. I am an alcoholic. No, you're a human being who struggles with alcoholism. I'm a cancer patient. No, you're not. You're a human being who has cancer and is, God willing, going to battle it to the bone. So I just say, like, it's really important. Words have tremendous value. So, like, I'm not.
He's not harping on you.
I am.
He's harping on the culture
I'll
that
take on
says
the
that.
stress. But I think it's important for us to say what we mean. We should never define a human being by their struggle. So, oh, that person's gay. No, that person is a human being that struggles with same-sex attraction. See the difference? Words have meaning, words have value. You're not the sum of your failures and weaknesses, you're the sum of the Father's love.
The only label that matters is that I'm a Christian and that I'm a beloved son or daughter of the Father. He beat me to that. I was going to harp on the same thing.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Continue.
There is a 2005 document from the Vatican that says persons with deep-seated homosexual inclinations should not be admitted to the seminary. Again, big words, deep-seated homosexual inclinations. The way I understood that and the way we interpreted that when I was the vocation director is that if someone, and you saw that in one of the paragraphs in the catechism, if I can find it real quick. Exclusive or predominant sexual attraction toward persons of the same sex. So the first thing is, it's not an on-off switch, or it's not an either-or. Our culture says, if you had a passing thought about a classmate in the shower at gym class, you are automatically gay. That's what our culture wants to tell you. What the church says is, you're human and you're affected by original sin, get over yourself. You've probably heard him say that, because he told me that a number of times. So, but someone who's going and buying into the same-sex culture, into the gay culture, someone who's going to buy into a gay lifestyle, and someone who's going to identify themselves as gay, because that has this whole much bigger connotation. The church is going to say their understanding of what it means to be a man and a father is going to be disrupted by that self-identity, by that deep-seated sexual attraction towards the same-sex person, a person of the same sex. Their understanding of what it means to give life is going to be so disordered, so twisted, or so misunderstood that they should not present themselves, they should not be admitted to the seminary for pursuit of the priesthood. And so you can extend to that also then religious life. But it's also, lead us not into temptation, we pray in the Our Father, right? Deliver us from evil. For a man who experiences deep-seated, predominant sexual attraction to other men, the worst place to be is in a culture of all men. It's a walking trap. So it's not out of denigration for the person. It's an exaltation of what we understand by the priesthood and how the priest gives life. And it's for the sanctification of that person that we say, you probably shouldn't present yourself. And in my 8 years as vocation director, we did turn down guys who identified as gay, who identified themselves as gay. There were also guys that came to me and said, Father, I love what the church teaches about married life. I love the culture of marriage. I love family life. But I do have some inclination towards same-sex attraction. But I firmly hold up what the church teaches and believes and practices. That person, I moved on. If someone came and said, I'm gay, and I lived a gay lifestyle, we're not going to admit that person to the seminary. Okay? Does that distinction make sense? Yeah? Is that okay?
Yep.
Yeah? All right. Hey, great question. Anything else?
Other questions?
Please ask a question, because if you don't ask a question, he's going to ask a question. I'm begging you. Now I just like reinforce none of you ask any questions, so you tries to stump me.
Well, I think the question that should ought to be out there. So if you just listen to what was said, the Catholic Church is saying people with same-sex attractions aren't supposed to act upon these desires, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm a man and I'm attracted to a man, I'm not supposed to act upon the desire. I'm supposed to restrain myself. If I'm a woman and I'm attracted to women, I'm supposed to restrain myself. So what if you went into Easter High School or Lawrenceburg High School or some in Dearborn and you said that? What are all of your classmates going to say? That's not fair.
Yeah.
That's not fair. Your church is saying that Bobby or Timmy or Susie or Dave can't act upon their sexual desires? That's not fair. That is going to be your number one response if you present the church's teaching on homosexuality.
Which is the same response that we get, why can't women be ordained priests? That's not fair. And when you run into that question, when you run into that response, that's not fair, what the Catechism does, what we want you to do is to take a step back and say, what principle is the church trying to protect? The foundational principle about who the human person is that the church is trying to protect. So from the outside, yeah, it may look unfair. But we're trying to protect this dignity and beauty and uphold the beauty of the human person, uphold the beauty of marriage, uphold the beauty of the transmission of life. And who else in high school is not allowed, does the church say, should not act upon their sexual urges? All of you. So we're not singling out Timmy who's in love with Johnny. We're singling out all of you. None of you are supposed to be acting on your sexual urges. Because they imprison. They imprison and they trap you. This goes to pornography, if I may. I did the wedding for a young couple. A guy who I knew when I was on internship, and who I thought at one point might have a vocation to the priesthood. A couple years ago, they came to me with his girlfriend, then his fiancée, who was his fiancée, the desire to get married. And I never asked a question to him, which I now ask. I now split them up and say, what's your experience of pornography? I didn't ask that question, and shame on me. But we went through there were no major warning, there were some warning signs. He had a daughter from a previous relationship. He had some other things, some maturity issues, but I was like, you should be okay. So I went through and I did the marriage. A year later, they're back in my office. They had just had a daughter. And she had just found out for the last 6 months he was having an affair. And in fact, left the hospital for the birth of his daughter to go hook up with his side hustle. What do you call it these days? Whatever that is. Can you imagine doing that? And I started to talk to him eventually, after he's a couple inches taller than I am and about 100 pounds heavier than I am. But he's not a small dude. She's pretty tiny. She wailed on it. Look, have at it. I'm not going to stop you. So I sat him down and said, when did you start looking at pornography? When I was 13. How bad's it gotten? How often do you look at porn? How often do you masturbate? Multiple times a day. Couldn't even make 6 months of marriage while his wife was pregnant with their daughter. He went out and hooked up. So, church says it's not fair for someone to get into their sexual urges because the church knows that to give into those urges at your age is going to imprison you for a long time. And I work with, I probably have 15 men and women who come to me with addictions to pornography. And how it disrupts not just their relationship with their spouse, their relationships with everybody. Because everybody becomes an object for my use. So.
I think that story, that witness, and seriously, that witness is awesome. I think it's important to hear that because it is all related. Anytime that the sexual act, which is designed for marriage, babies and bonding, babies and bonding, babies and bonding, we heard it in the contraception and abortion talk. Anytime that we disrupt that act from God's original intention, you're going to end up with problems. Whether you're in high school and you're screwing around with your boyfriend or your girlfriend, whether you're in college, whether it's a homosexual act, whether it's a pornography, like any time that we take God's plan for human sexuality and we twist it, the ripple effect of pain and hurt go on for forever. And the desire of the church, when we look at an individual who has desire to have sexual relations of their own sex, and we say, we love you, we understand you have the desire, but we ask of you to refrain from the desire, just as we ask an alcoholic to refrain from the desire to drink too much, just as we ask a glutton to not eat so much, just as we ask a individual who's attracted to children and wants to have sexual relations with children, we say, don't act upon that. Because the sexual act was designed for something so much more, and it hurts you and the other individual.
Okay, we'll close with, so Sunday's gospel was the teaching on prayer, the Our Father and the teaching on prayer. I was so hoping when I picked up my Bible, I hadn't looked yet at what next Sunday's gospel was. I was so hoping it was this one. But it's not, so I'm going to read it to you anyways. You're welcome. Jesus was driving out a demon that was mute, and when the demon had gone out, the mute person spoke, and the crowds were amazed. Some of them said, by the power of Beelzebul, the prince of demons, he drives out demons. Others, to test him, asked for a sign from heaven. But he knew their thoughts. And he said to them, every kingdom divided against itself will be laid waste, and house will fall against house. If Satan is divided against himself, how will his kingdom stand? For you say that it is by Beelzebul that I drive out demons. If I then drive out demons by Beelzebul, by whom do your people drive them out? They don't drive them out. That's the secret to that joke. Therefore, they will be your judges. But if it is by the finger of God that I drive out demons, then the kingdom of God has come upon you. And when a strong man fully armed guards his palace, his possessions are safe. But when one stronger than he attacks and overcomes him, he takes away the armor on which he relied and distributes the spoil. Whoever is not with me is against me. Whoever does not gather with me scatters. The devil is real, and the importance of these topics, homosexuality, transgenderism, abortion, contraception, all the sexual teachings of the church, that's where the devil's going to try and disrupt you. Because that's the most important thing that God gave to you as a creature, a beloved son or daughter of himself. Resist the devil. 1 Peter, resist the devil. The devil is prowling about looking like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour. Resist him steadfast in your faith. Okay? Hey, thanks for the attention. I know this is a tough topic. And you hear a lot, this is the only voice, we know this is the only voice you're hearing that comes from this direction. Everywhere else in your world is going to be saying, give into it, give into it. So thanks for your attention, thanks for your attendance, thanks for being here. Please know I'll be praying for you guys. Pray for me, pray for priests in Cincinnati right now. If you haven't heard the news, one of my classmates was just removed from the priesthood. So pray for him, pray for his parish as well. I greatly appreciate it. Okay.
Round of applause for Kyle.